Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. I'm Alex, your guide for this exploration.
And I'm Sarah, ready to unpack the layers with you.
Today we're tackling a situation that really grabbed headlines and, well, continues to have significant repercussions: the 2025 India-Pakistan war.
That's right.
A curious listener sent us a really comprehensive set of reports. We've got analyses from the Robert Lansing Institute, the Foreign Affairs Forum, Breaking Defense, SIPRI, Responsible Statecraft, and even a fascinating look at nuclear deterrence in the region.
Exactly. And our aim today, really, is to go beyond just the immediate news cycle. We want to understand the deeper strategic and economic currents, why it happened, what actually went down.
And, crucially, what the implications are moving forward.
Precisely. Think of this as your streamlined yet thorough analysis of a, let's face it, really complex geopolitical event.
Okay, let's get into it then. The Robert Lansing Institute report, it pinpoints the trigger: a devastating terrorist attack in Indian-administered Kashmir. India quickly assigned blame to militants operating from Pakistan, and India's response was, well, sharp and multifaceted. We're talking air and missile strikes, cross-border operations, even cyber actions. Pakistan retaliated, but with more limited conventional forces and what are termed asymmetric attacks.
And this whole thing escalated incredibly fast, didn't it?
It really did. Played out in real time across media platforms and even nudged the region dangerously close to nuclear confrontation. What immediately jumps out at you from this initial sequence?
Well, what's particularly noteworthy for me is the sheer speed, like you said, but also the fact that this was a truly multi-domain conflict.
Yeah.
Meaning it wasn't just fought on land, it was in cyberspace through information warfare. The report's mention of cyber ops and the big role media played in shaping perceptions, that really highlights how modern conflicts are, evolving.
That makes sense.
And it's also crucial that a U.S.-China mediated ceasefire eventually brought the active fighting to a halt. There was quiet support from actors in the Gulf, too.
So, significant international involvement.
Definitely. It underscores the intense international interest, even though there's no formal peace agreement yet, and tensions remain high. Forces are still at elevated readiness. That's key to understanding the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, and the Robert Lansing Institute also makes a crucial point. The war didn't actually resolve the underlying issue of Kashmir.
No clear winner.
Exactly. Neither side could claim a decisive military victory. Instead, what we saw was intensified military presence along the line of control, significant civilian displacement, serious human rights concerns.
And unfortunately, it increases the risk of renewed insurgency.
Right. And the way the conflict got politicized in both India and Pakistan, well, that's just hardened their positions. It really feels like this sets the stage for ongoing instability.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the conflict had repercussions beyond just India and Pakistan.
How so?
Well, their attention, their resources, they had diverted from things like regional counterterrorism efforts and diplomatic work in Afghanistan and Central Asia post-Taliban.
Right, that vacuum could be dangerous.
It could potentially create opportunities for various extremist groups to expand. But on a more positive note, the UAE and Saudi Arabia stepping in as effective mediators,
Right.
that actually boosted their standing globally.
Interesting side effect.
Yeah, and we also saw temporary volatility in Gulf energy markets, which, interestingly, seems to have pushed those states to diversify their diplomatic ties faster.
Okay, here's where the Robert Lansing Institute forecast gets really interesting. Their outlook for the next 5 years, they call it stable instability.
Stable instability. Sounds about right for the region sometime.
Doesn't it? So short term, next 6-12 months, they see a fragile de-escalation but a high risk of incidents, especially if there's another major terror attack in India.
That seems plausible.
Medium term, 1-3 years, they expect a strategic rethink, maybe an accelerated arms race. India is likely to grow its military capabilities, think air defense, cyber, special forces.
And Pakistan.
Pakistan, probably with support from China and the Gulf, will likely focus on precision strike capabilities and unconventional deterrence. Things short of direct military confrontation, perhaps.
This naturally brings up the nuclear question, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Nuclear stability.
It does. The report suggests a potential, well, weakening of that stability. India might lean towards higher nuclear readiness.
While Pakistan maintains its ambiguity.
Exactly. And the possibility of cross-border proxy groups popping up again is also mentioned. The risk of, say, conventional or cyber skirmishes escalating into a limited war is a real concern unless new crisis management tools are put in place.
So better communication channels are needed.
Desperately. And long-term, 3 to 5 years. The forecast suggests more of this managed hostility unless there are big political shifts inside either country.
And external influence.
China and the Gulf states likely gain more leverage over Pakistan. India might deepen defense ties with the QUAD, plus the US, Japan, Australia, India, maybe others.
And Kashmir remains the flashpoint.
Always. The high-end risk scenario they sketch out is quite sobering. A future conflict involving AI systems, cyber attacks on nuclear command chains.
Or even tactical nuclear use if things spiral early on. Scary stuff.
It is. What's really noteworthy here is this complex dance between traditional warfare tanks, planes, and the non-traditional stuff.
Cyber, drones, propaganda.
Yeah.
The report emphasizes their increasingly vital but conventional military power and diplomacy. Still absolutely essential and deeply linked.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. Let's turn our attention to the economic fallout. Antonio Bardwaj's analysis lays this out pretty starkly.
Right, the money side. Always critical.
The immediate aftermath of the 2025 attack triggered significant financial turmoil in Pakistan. Karachi Stock Exchange took a nosedive.
India's markets were more resilient.
Initially, yes, but prolonged conflict carries the risk of reversing those gains. History shows even limited fights cost both nations billions capital flight, currency depreciation.
A full-scale war would be catastrophic economically. You could see the Pakistani rupee devalue significantly, India's deficit widening.
And the bilateral trade collapse. Even though the official value is maybe modest, around $1.2 billion annually, the disruption has immediate consequences.
Yeah, things like Pakistan's access to Indian pharmaceuticals, soybeans, poultry feed already disrupted. India might see minor shortages in cement, dry fruits.
Plus, Pakistan's reliance on informal trade routes means import costs would just inflate.
And the sheer cost of the fighting itself.
Staggering. A short conventional conflict could cost India somewhere between 1,460 crore and 5,000 crore per day. Just direct military costs.
Per day? Wow.
A prolonged conflict could lead to losses over $17.8 billion daily. That's comparable to Greece's economic collapse back in 2010.
And Pakistan's financial situation was already fragile, right? Low foreign reserves, lots of external debt, makes it incredibly vulnerable.
Absolutely. The IMF's growth forecasts for Pakistan would likely just plummet under war conditions, potential for hyperinflation even.
India, while economically stronger, wouldn't escape unscathed either.
No, significant growth sacrifices. Funds diverted from infrastructure, private investment, pulling back.
Plus the long-term costs human capital, productivity losses, potentially alienating trade partners, it all adds up.
And let's not forget the impact on what you, the listener, pay for everyday goods.
Right. Consumer prices.
In India, the main risks. Currency depreciation makes imports, especially oil, more expensive. Rising global oil prices due to the conflict itself.
And increased defense spending might pull funds from social programs.
Exactly. While the direct trade impact might be minimal for India overall, supply chain issues could still cause localized price spikes. Pakistan, though, much deeper crisis. Soaring inflation, widespread shortages.
Connecting this to the broader global picture, these economic impacts, energy volatility, supply chain issues, inflation, they echo what we've seen elsewhere recently.
Like Russia-Ukraine, the Israel-Palestine situation.
Exactly. It just underscores how interconnected modern economies are. One regional conflict can send ripples everywhere.
Okay, moving to military spending specifically. India's 2025-26 defense budget got a 9.5% boost, which sounds like a lot.
But there's a catch, right?
Yeah, analysis from Breaking Defense points out a huge chunk, like 72% goes to pensions, salaries, maintenance, infrastructure, stuff you need, but
Leaves less for crucial new kit.
exactly. Experts like Ian Hall note India urgently needs more drones, better air defense, improved tanks, fighting vehicles, modern aircraft, helicopters. And the procurement system itself is often cited as sluggish.
Which kind of aligns with the CIPRI data on arms transfers. India was the second biggest importer globally from 2020-24.
Though imports actually decreased slightly compared to the previous period.
Right, possibly reflecting more domestic production efforts the Make in India push.
But Russia's still the biggest supplier.
Still the largest, yes, but there's a clear trend towards diversification. More imports from France, Israel, the U.S.
Okay, let's look at lessons learned. The Brookings Institution analysis highlights some troubling takeaways from the conflict.
Like what?
Well, the global consensus on attribution, figuring out who's behind an attack, now seems to decisively favor India's view.
Which could increase pressure for faster reactions next time. Maybe too fast?
Potentially. Increased political pressure for hasty, maybe escalatory responses. Also, both militaries seem to have set new precedents for target selection that could raise the stakes in future fights.
And the info war aspect.
Pakistan's big efforts in information operations, combined with India's reactive media environment that creates real risks for miscalculation, plus the widespread use of drones and loitering munitions, it's really blurred the lines of the traditional escalation ladder.
Yeah, that drone point is key. And what's particularly concerning is the precedent of targeting air defense systems,
Yeah.
like the Indian strike on Nurkan Air Base.
Yeah, why is this so concerning?
Militaries usually see that as highly escalatory, taking out the other side's ability to defend itself. It's a big step. And drones, as you said, they occupy this murky middle ground. Easy to misinterpret intent.
Okay, finally, let's bring in the nuclear deterrence paper. Absolutely crucial context here.
Because despite all the heated talk during the conflict,
It seems both sides fundamentally understood the catastrophic consequences of using nukes. The basic logic of mutually assured destruction, it mostly held.
so the deterrent worked, essentially.
Largely, yes. India's declared no first-use policy. Pakistan feeling the conflict hadn't crossed its own threshold for using tactical nukes. Those were key factors.
And the international pressure, too, presumably.
Definitely. Potential for massive global sanctions, losing international support, huge diplomatic damage. That likely weighed heavily. Nuclear weapons in South Asia are arguably more tools of influence, of deterrence, than actual battlefield options.
But there were scenarios where it could have gone differently.
Yes, the analysis points that out. Things like deep Indian armored thrusts into Pakistan, a massive Indian air campaign achieving total dominance, or a collapse of state authority in Pakistan. Those could have changed the calculation. The risk is still there.
Especially with cyber threats to command and control, and just the sheer speed things can escalate these days. So what does this all boil down to for you, our listener? This deep dive reveals a conflict that, while thankfully brief, has definitely left behind a legacy.
Yeah, increased tensions, a worrying acceleration of the arms race, and significant economic vulnerabilities, especially, it seems, for Pakistan.
And the growing importance of these non-traditional forms of warfare, cyber, drones, info ops, all under that ever-present shadow of nuclear weapons. It makes this a region that really demands close, careful attention.
Exactly. The strategic landscape has shifted, no doubt, and the international community faces this ongoing challenge of trying to prevent any further escalation. Understanding how military actions, economic pressures, and those complex nuclear dynamics all interact, it's just crucial for grasping the full picture.
For those of you wanting to explore this further, I'd encourage you to really think about the implications of this evolving nature of warfare. The role of drones, cyber capabilities, and that incredibly delicate balance of power in a region armed with nuclear weapons.
Also, consider the profound economic costs, even of limited conflicts, and how they impact long-term stability and development. It's not just about the military side.
Which leads to an important question for you to consider. In a world that seems increasingly shaped by these kinds of regional conflicts, and with rapid advancements in military tech, what specific mechanisms do you think could actually be most effective? Effective in preventing escalation, and maybe, just maybe, fostering lasting peace in such volatile regions?
A big question to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until our next exploration, keep that curiosity burning.
Absolutely. We'll catch you next time.